Hey, Guoba here. Today we'll be checking out Archer and Saber post 4.4, where they both received a new bestie, at least in gameplay. Did builds change at all? Main stats? Lycone strength? And at the same time, we can also check out non-Gilgamesh or Rin related stuff like Asheville's Lycone on Archer. So like and sub if this helps at all. And before we start, a quick word from Goben. Hey, Goben here. Today's video is sponsored by Zenless Zone Zero, which, if you don't know, is an urban fantasy action RPG. It is having its second anniversary celebration as we speak, which of course means insane rewards like this limited S-tier agent and W engine selector, which somehow includes the powerful Lucia. And we'll also get 30 limited pulls on top of some other bonuses. If you're topping up for the insane new Void Hunter, then there are even more goodies, and speaking of her, Remiel is finally coming to Zenless as a special anomaly DPS character with stunning angelic gameplay and guaranteed broken performance. You can use her in the brand new permanent combat event along with newly buffed characters, and you can also check her out in the upcoming stories. And hey, they're also collabing with HSR soon, which is pretty sick. Definitely be sure to download and try ZZZ today using my link down below, and back to the video. So, starting with Archer, on release we rocked his signature with Quantum Set and Rutilant Arena, but technically all three have been replaced in some way or scenario. With Rin here, does anything change back? First, let's talk Relics, as explained in my Relic update video when Navigator dropped. The 54% damage to skills and ults if you are consistently maxing it is much stronger than 20% Death Shred in a vacuum. Even at 300% damage, adding 54% is still stronger than going from 0 to 20% Death Shred. But of course, as we also know, going from high Death Shred to 20 plus on top of that is stronger than 0 to 20%. But they have cons too. Navigator doesn't buff follow-ups, which includes his lovely new joint attack with Rin, so we'll take that into account for calculations. Genius, however, has to have him versus Quantum Weakness, or else it is a complete brick. And even E2 won't save it necessarily, as target swapping would be a problem. Well, despite Navigator coming out ahead of Genius at low Death Shred pre-Rin, the new joint attack is a ton of damage, and on top of that, his new main stat choice will mean more follow-ups in general. This all means that Quantum Set's universal buffing is preferred, and so as long as you are versus Quantum Weakness, Genius should just win. The conditions for Navigator to win are first, pure single target with minimal Death Shred, but that's quite niche, and not considering any damage percent sustainless slots. Second, versus non-quantum weak, Genius is a complete fraud. And third, if you are above 80% def ignore pre-Genius, well then it starts falling off as we get nothing past 100%, so Navigator would take the lead. For planars, it's pretty simple. Rutilant is still perfectly fine, but Tengoku is better and made for him. Funnily enough, with his new follow-up, Inert becomes a viable option and can even win against Rutilant with enough enemy targets and overall damage. Of course, I still recommend just going Tengoku. There is of course Banana with DHPT, but ideally we are running Huohuo. Your main stats will be crit rate for the chest, attack percent for the boots, damage percent for the orb by far, and then I recommend an energy rope post Rin. Sparkle gives attack E1 even more, Rin gives 150% attack, he gets a ton from his best Lycones, and he wears attack boots, attack subs, Huohuo, or he could run Robin Sustainless, etc. Damage orb over attack orb with his S1 is like a 9% DPS gain alone. That's how much he's oversaturated on this stat. More follow-ups on Archer and more ults in general felt so much comfier to me. The damage drop isn't that bad for the previous reasons, and the extra attack frequency makes the overall damage in a fight end up higher normally anyway. You'll focus on hitting 100% crit rate in combat and avoid speed rolls, and then make sure all other sub-rolls go into attack or crit damage. But because he has a bazillion of both, there's no real number to worry about. And then not much changed in the Lycone department, but if you didn't know by now, his best choice is the Finale of a Lie from Mr. Asheville rather than his own signature. It's just better in a lot of ways and offers a unique debuff rather than just mega stacking attack. If you got Archer's Cone last year or this year, no need at all to pull, it's just extra info for people that somehow dodged this. And of course, we gotta talk about Eidolons. Archer E1 back in the day was a banger even with Sparkle and even post Nova Flare. However, Rin's 4 SP rotation has kinda changed things. If you run Archer, Sparkle, Rin, Sustain, you don't need Archer E1 at all, it is near useless in most cases, and no, giving Rin 2 extra SP isn't game changing. However, if you run Archer, Sparkle, Rin, Sustainers, then E1 is still just as cool as before. RMC advancing Archer out of nowhere can make those extra SP really count, likewise when Robin brings the whole team up instead. If your Archer gets extra turns through this last slot, then his E1 improves it a lot. This is also the case if simply replacing Sparkle for RMC, as you lose out on that massive SP injection from Sparkle ults. And E2 gets a little better if you do pop on an energy rope, but in most fights, you're swapping around targets, and so I still don't think it's a fantastic Eidolon. It's a 16% DPS increase to the one target you specifically altered if considering they are already weak to Quantum. This is a 0% gain on any other target, and since you're likely not ulting immediately, you still have a few skills and follow-ups without the 16% gain on the target that you do end up ulting. Of course, if you got Archer E1 back in the day and you have no plan whatsoever to grab Gilgamesh even for collection or whatever, then what else are you going to do with your freebie? Moving on to our lovely Saber. Her OG build was Wave Strider or Scholar, sometimes Eagle, her Sig of course, as well as Inert Sal Soto. Well, with the loss of another targeting ally, Wave Strider is much harder to pull off, so it ends up as Scholar versus Eagle for her Relics. However, a third contender has entered with the amount of stat spamming this lady gets. She has so much damage percent, crit damage, crit rate, attack percent, she's like another Jingliu. I mean, all Fate characters have so many self-stat buffs. This means the unique Def Ignore of Genius can also make its way into the equation, just as it did for Jingliu in the past. If you farmed Scholar already, stick to that of course. But well, damage is nice, but so are turns, especially with the new charged joint attack mechanic Gilgamesh introduced. Since we are losing a hyper buffer that might have been centered around Saber taking more turns, like RMC or Sunday, then having those actions back through a potential bird named Relic set can be really nice. If you're running RMC, you can probably stick to attack percent boots, but I think otherwise, either having speed boots or Eagle set is really good for Saber. Some fights, you might not feel it, but in faster fights, getting to that 8 out of 8 is so important. As for her planars, the 4.4 planar Cosmic Life Sciences is like barely any better than the newly usable Izumo, thanks to Gilgamesh also being Destruction. Also, this goes for Lightcones later too, but now that the comp has 2 DPS rather than just 1, any selfish upgrade like planars and Lightcones, as we'll see, won't impact the team as much as it used to. Fate characters are also again hella saturated on these common stats, and so these relics and planars that only add to those don't do as much as you'd hope. Of course, it's still good to upgrade your gear if it's a big enough leap, but yeah, that's also why in the Gilgamesh video, you could see barely any increase in the overall team damage when changing to better gear. Saber's main stats are then still mostly the same: crit damage chest, speed or attack percent boots, but Orb is now definitely damage percent with the extra 120% attack from Gilgamesh, and attack percent rope stays due to most of her energy being fixed energy, including the new 120 from the joint attack. Your goal is to hit 100% crit rate in combat, hit turns through Eagle or some speed, unless using RMC, and then the rest can go into attack or crit damage. Light cones are nearly the same, but we do have Gilgameshes, and since they are two pretty similar units, this cone works somewhat well for Saber too. So if you never managed to pick up her Sig originally, 200 pulls this patch could let you grab Gilgamesh's light cone to use on her instead. If you don't plan on pulling, skip the cone though. Her Eidolons didn't really change post-Gilgamesh since they are all selfish and don't interact based on allies. In fact, since she's sharing damage with Meshi now, the damage is lowered in her investment. I'd only say the E6 remains OP since it synergizes with Gilgamesh very well. Every extra ult she's getting for free is going to be converted partially into his energy. But yeah, I hope this short update video helps you all out, and I hope you've been enjoying your Fate units. Let me know which Fate team you're rocking right now, and thank you so much for watching. Thanks to my awesome YouTube members, and have a good day.